In 1979, the lights went out. Ozzy Osbourne, the voice that helped turn heavy metal from a club rumor into a worldwide thunderclap, was shown the door by his own band. The partying had stopped being a joke and started being a sentence. He drifted into a hotel room in Los Angeles with the curtains sealed, the television murmuring to itself, and the phone refusing to ring. People in the business smiled sadly and said the same thing. He'd had a run. They were ready to let the noise fade. He wasn't. He just didn't know that yet. A few months of nothing can feel like a lifetime when your identity used to be measured in decibels. Days blurred. Nights were heavier. He could still feel the stage under his feet if he closed his eyes, but feeling it wasn't the same as getting back to it. The press wrote the eulogy in the present tense. A few friends stopped calling because it hurt to listen. Other people stopped because they preferred their legends tidy. Then a door opened. Sharon Arden stepped through it. She didn't bring pep talks or pity. She brought a plan. Eat, sleep, try. She pushed him out of the room and pointed him toward musicians who weren't interested in babysitting a ghost. The idea was basic. Start a new band, write songs that didn't apologize for yesterday, and play like tomorrow was already booked. He said yes because he was out of excuses. The yes changed everything. That single yes will snowball fast. Auditions can be cruel. Guitar players cycled through with big stories and bigger volume. But the air stayed flat. One afternoon, a 22-year-old with a white Les Paul walked in and plugged into an amp like he had nothing to prove. Randy Rhoads warmed up, not even really playing for keeps yet, and somehow the walls leaned closer. It was the tone, clean but dangerous, bright edges on a dark canvas, and the way the notes lined up like they had a reason to be there. Ozzy didn't need a meeting. He needed that sound. The decision was almost instant. The room went from gray to electric. The next note would change everything. They built a core fast. Bassist Bob Daisley brought a writer's brain and a fighter's patience. Drummer Lee Kerslake locked the groove like a steel door. Rehearsals turned into sparks, sparks turned into shapes, and soon there was a feeling none of them wanted to leave. It wasn't nostalgia, it was momentum. The new material didn't chase what Ozzy had been. It attacked what he still could be. And the room was about to catch fire. One afternoon, Randy slid into a pattern in F-sharp minor that snapped everyone's heads up at once. It was simple, but not simple at all, like the kind of hook you swear you've heard before even though nobody's ever played it that way. Somewhere in the signal chain, a misbehaving pedal coughed out a chug, a phantom locomotive under the notes. Daisley grinned. It sounded like motion you couldn't stop if you tried. The idea stuck, a train with no brakes, a ride you choose even while knowing how wild it could get. Now they needed words sharp enough to ride it. Ozzy chased a vocal line that cut through the racket and felt like a dare. He wrote like a man with the clock in his face. The words found a bigger target than a party gone sideways. They spoke to the Cold War hum everyone pretended not to hear. To that steady anxiety you carry around when the evening news keeps whispering worst-case scenarios. If the world felt one sneeze away from disaster, then this chorus would be the shout that pushed back. A single phrase hit the bullseye. Going off the rails wasn't defeat, it was a refusal to sit quietly while the ground shook. Time to see if the studio could bottle it. They took the song to tape with a mix of precision and adrenaline. Rhoads built the guitar part like architecture, double-tracking lines until the harmonies felt like blades, flying in formation. Daisley's bass rolled like heavy wheels. Kerslake drove the beat like a signal flare. Ozzy sang with urgency, a voice on a rooftop yelling across the city. When the final playback hit the speakers, even the skeptics felt it. This wasn't a B-side. This was the centerpiece of a life reboot. Next stop, the world's speakers. The album arrived with the kind of timing you can't plan. Radio DJs didn't have to be convinced. They put the single on and watched the phone lines light up. The guitar figure climbed, the room reacted, the chorus landed. People who didn't know the verses still sang like they'd been waiting. It spread from clubs to theaters, from theaters to arenas, and everywhere the same thing happened. The opening bars worked like a switch. Faces lifted, arms went up. Strangers yelled words into the same air and felt less alone for 3.5 minutes. What happened on stage would prove it wasn't luck. The road rebuilt a person. Long bus rides turned into moving workshops where jokes, plans, and song ideas competed for space. Sound check stopped being a chore and became a countdown. Ozzy and Randy pushed each other without ever needing to say it out loud. Every night they aimed higher. Some nights they missed, most nights they didn't. Reviews shifted from clucking about the past to admitting the present was undeniable. The comeback wasn't polite, it was loud and obvious, and selling out buildings. But the sky was about to cloud. Success always brings weather. Arguments about who wrote what and who deserved which share followed the record like trailers. Lawyers stepped forward with folders. Fans chose sides on message boards before message boards existed, by way of letters, bar debates, and the most old-fashioned method, what felt right. Years later, a reissue decision detonated the fanbase when the bass and drum performances on those original tracks were replaced. People did not take it well. After the explosion, the classic parts returned on a later restoration, and the story kept rolling. The song had already done something few tracks ever do. It crossed from being a hit into being a place people go when they need to feel momentum under their feet. And still, the anthem kept gaining speed. Then there were the cultural battles that always seemed to orbit this singer. A tragic case got pinned on a different song entirely, and a legal fight tried to argue that music could steer someone to a terrible decision. Judges threw it out. Free expression matters, they said, and art isn't a map for harm. The headlines were noisy while they lasted. The crowds were louder. Through it all, the same opening climb sliced open the night and invited thousands of throats to exhale the fear they'd been carrying. The backlash only fed the myth. Randy Rhoads changed the math for guitar players everywhere. He wasn't just fast, he was precise, melodic, and disciplined. With classical shorthand coded into every run, he tracked and retracked until the harmonies felt inevitable. He made fireworks serve feeling. When the band lost him, it felt like the stage lights themselves flickered. The show went on because that's what shows do, but it went on with a different weight. Every time the train pulled out of the station after that, it sounded like a salute. The audience knew. The band knew. The song became both an anthem and a memorial, a nightly reminder of what two artists built in a blinding rush of time. His absence would make the song even bigger. Years rolled, trends rotated, subgenres rose and fell like tides. The track didn't care. It lived in arenas, stadiums, playoff highlight reels, commercials that needed instant adrenaline, and car stereos on bad days when you need the world to move out of your way. Kids learned the opening line in bedrooms and rec rooms because it felt like a rite of passage. Parents heard it and remembered who they were before bills piled up. The riff was a handshake across generations, and the story still had one more curve. The story curved back toward its beginning in a way that felt almost scripted. A final hometown roar. Old bandmates. A city singing its own history back to itself. When Ozzy stood there and let that first line fly again, it didn't feel like a farewell so much as a thank you note written at full volume. The audience didn't want to mourn anything. They wanted to celebrate a ride that had refused to stall. The echo kept traveling. Even after the lights dimmed, the track kept climbing. Streams spiked. Sales jumped. For the first time ever, charts that had ignored the song on its first run finally opened the door and let it walk in. People didn't discover it so much as recognize it. Like an old friend they suddenly realized they missed. Decades after a hotel room felt like the end of a story, the single was busy writing a new chapter by sheer force of will. The charts finally caught up. That's the strange power of a perfect hook. It doesn't just glue itself to your brain, it glues moments together. The first time you heard it, the best time you heard it, the time you needed it. The line isn't a complaint about chaos. It's an acceptance that life moves fast and sideways, and sometimes the smartest thing you can do is grab the rail, yell, and refuse to fall. That mix of danger and joy is baked into the melody, the rhythm, the very shape of the guitar figure. It feels like acceleration. That's why the next line sticks. People ask why this song, of all songs, keeps winning. The answer is boring and beautiful. Because it's built better. The melody is a chant, the rhythm is a machine, the arrangement leaves no dead air. It's engineered for 1,000 voices without losing the punch in one set of headphones. On stage, it gives a band room to attack. On the radio, it gives a driver something to steer with. In headphones, it turns a bad hallway into a runway. Most hits fade into the background of their decade. This one keeps punching its way into new rooms. It's built to win again and again. There's another reason. Redemption stories never go out of style. The world loves a second act when it feels earned. This one was paid for with sweat, focus, and stubbornness that bordered on myth. The singer who almost disappeared decided to gamble on a group of relative strangers, and together they made a sound nobody could ignore. That's not luck. That's work. It just sounds like lightning because the right people were holding the bottle. If you stumbled into the song at a game, you felt the stands become a single body. If you stumbled into it at a party, you saw the temperature change. If you caught it alone, you felt less alone by the end. That's the mark of a track that outgrows its category. It's no longer metal, no longer classic rock. It's a utility. It does a job on demand. It turns a room on. It worked anywhere you needed momentum. The fall was brutal. The comeback was louder. That's the sentence that keeps echoing when you talk about this track. It didn't just rescue a career. It rewired a legacy. It proved that one great idea, executed without hesitation, can carry a person from the edge of silence back into the center of the room. That's why the opening climb still feels like a door swinging open. That's why the chorus still lands like a promise. That's why the final ring of feedback still feels less like an ending and more like a handoff to whoever needs it next. If you strip the myth away, you're left with something stronger, 4 people in a room, listening hard, building a piece of music that made sense of the noise around them. They weren't chasing immortality, they were making something that worked today. The rest happened because the song refused to age. It still doesn't. As long as that first note rises like a spark and the crowd leans into the same breath, the ride keeps moving. If this story hit the right chord, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell for more.